and welcome to the Convex Conversation on location on a log in the Lake District. I'm dressed for the occasion in a swimsuit, woolly hat and an old pair of flip-flops, grateful this is an audio-only podcast. My heart is racing a bit. I'm on the edge of Windermere, where the current temperature is a rather chilly 12 degrees, to meet renowned cold water swim coach Gilly McArthur. Gilly is passionate about swimming in cold and icy temperatures as low as 0, barefoot wanderings, climbing, sketching, and helping people access cold water and the outdoors safely for mental and physical well-being. In fact, she's currently part of a team working with the NHS on a new mental health project, using cold water exposure to help with depression and anxiety. We'll also be chatting about the science and research, hopefully separating fact from fiction. And today I'm hoping to conquer my fears, dig deep, and with Gilly's expert help, try to experience a little of the magic so many wild swimmers describe. Gilly, I am beyond excited to be sitting here at the edge of this beautiful expanse of water with you. Tell me a bit about where we actually are.
So we are sitting halfway up Windermere, obviously in the Lake District. The north of the lake is about halfway up and we are in the middle bit. So it's about a mile across from here, and Windermere is 10 or 11 miles long. And beautiful autumn day sitting underneath this beautiful big old beech tree. So it's the perfect time of year to start your cold water swimming journey, catching the degrees as they drop, because in these temperatures you're going to get a little bit of a buzz, but it's not going to be too hard for you.
12 degrees, I'm guessing to someone like you is probably going to feel like a bath. But for me, on my first proper experience, this is proper cold water, isn't it?
Yeah, so cold water is classed as 15 degrees and under. Ice water is 5 degrees and under. But the science really is saying that in anything under 20 degrees, you're going to be getting some sort of benefit. So this is definitely going to be cold water. You're definitely going to feel something. But even just showing up on the lake shore, you're going to get a benefit because our brains are going to be calming down just by sitting by a body of water and just watching nature unfold. Yeah.
It's funny, even just sitting here on the log, watching the water, and you can hear the dog bounding around in the background, chasing his ball in the water too. I can already feel my heart rate slow a little, and I just feel really chilled and really happy here.
There's lots of science around that. If you put people's brains into an MRI, put a body into an MRI, our amygdalas, our fight, flight or freeze part of our brain will actually calm down when we're in a green and blue space. So this is where we're meant to be. We're 80% water. It's a beautifully relaxing place to be. And that's a lot of the work that is now coming out of the science, is that just being in nature and this nature connection is the thing that's really sort of powerful for us.
So talk me through the plan and what we're going to be doing in the next few minutes.
Okay. We're really lucky today. Today is an absolutely perfect day. You've brought the perfect cold water swimming weather up because there's no wind, which is something that you want. The wind will strip about 2 or 3 degrees off our bodies quite quickly when we get out of the water. So we want to get dressed quite quickly. But today there's no wind, so we can really enjoy the swim. What we're going to do is get undressed, lay our clothes out in the order that we're going to put our clothes back on.
Clever.
Very clever. We're going to get our cup of tea ready for when we get out. We're going to stand on a mat because we lose quite a lot of heat to our feet. So we're going to stand on I've got an old gardening mat for you to stand on. And then we're going to have a very slow sort of staged immersion. Although there's 2 absolutely awesome big long wooden jetties to jump in off, we're not going to be doing any jumping in today. Boo. We're going to.
Is it important to take it slowly?
Yeah, it is really important to take it slowly. And again, there's loads of science around that. But essentially what we're wanting to do is not have this cold shock response. And the cold shock response happens when we get into cold water and we have this sort of gasp reflex. So we get into the water and we go, and that can lead to a drowning or an ingestion of water. So we're going to get in very slowly and we're going to be sort of more centered in our bodies than externally. So if we can focus on our breath and just focus on really being here. A lot of swimmers a lot of people who get into cold water swimming talk about how it just calms them down and it's almost like a meditation. And today we'll experience that. We're going to get into the water slowly, We're going to splash some water onto our face, onto our hands, put our hands into the water to get that sensation of the cold. And then we're going to slowly keep going and keep going. And then the secret is that when we are ready to dip down into the water, we're just going to have a very gentle exhale. Because a lot of people, when they get into cold water for that very first time, they close their eyes, they close their hands, they lift up their shoulders, and they have this like tight squeezed face. And all that's doing is signaling to your body and to your brain that there's something sort of scary going on, which is not what we want. So we want to be just greeting the water, appreciating that we're here, looking at everything that's going on around us and just marveling at that. And then when we're ready, we're going to gently sink down. We're going to drop our breath and just have a nice sigh out. And then the first sort of 60 to 90 seconds is going to feel quite cold. But after that, you'll find that cold shock response, that gasping will diminish. And at that point, if you want to, we can do a little bit of swimming. But a lot of the people, in terms of the study that we're running with the NHS, is that you don't need to even do any swimming. A lot of the winter swimmers that I know do a lot of bobbing around. In the summer, they'll do a lot more distance. But at this time of year, it's sort of chatting in water and just doing what you want to do. And even just showing up, as I say, on the shore like this today. I mean, why wouldn't you want to be here?
Showing up's half of the battle. Shall we go and do it and concentrate? Because I feel like I need to concentrate on what we're doing, and then we can pick up and see how I got on. But what are you hoping, Gilly, that I'll get out of today?
I hope that you have an experience that will stick with you for the rest of your life, because I think a lot of people come to cold water in a way which is maybe a bit alarming, or they do it on the first day of January and they run in and run out again and go, my goodness, I can't do this. And I think that there's so many benefits to getting into cold water that we just haven't really scratched the surface of yet. And so today it's just going to be about giving you that first experience to know that you can take this further when you go back home, and eventually you'll end up driving around the country or elsewhere with your swimming costume in the back of your car going, oh, I could get into that body of water. Yippee.
Wow. Let's do it. I'm ready. Okay, let's do it.
Welcome. Oh my goodness. Welcome to autumn. Woody. It's beautiful. Oh my god, it's beautiful. It's hard. Yeah. But, so what you can do is you can just use your back plates and just put your to get them to blunt that cold shock response.
So we're back on dry land, Gilly. That was the most extraordinary experience. How did I do?
Do you know what? You did really well. For a first time, I was very impressed.
Were you?
I don't say that often, but I was very impressed. Not that there's anything to be done about striving. That's what's lovely about coming down to the water, is it is a place for you to ditch the Strava, and we're not really caring about a distance, a time or a temperature. Certainly in these temperatures, that water was like 11.7 degrees. But yeah. You seem to enjoy it. Did you enjoy it?
I absolutely loved it. I think I'm addicted. It was challenging. Mm-hmm. I tried to just really listen to your voice and try and do the breathing you talked about. Mm-hmm. I was focused on the ducks and the leaves under my feet on the bed of the lake. Mm-hmm. And the beauty. And then I shut my eyes at one point. It was a bit nippy when you get to the waist. It's like, whoa, that is really super cold. But it was really exhilarating, and it's so good for you, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because there's like bits, nips, and then pits. And once you get your bits in, you're like, okay. And then once you feel it getting around your waist, it is. But it's just that letting your breath go and just gently submerging. And if we do it in a way which isn't heightening our sympathetic nervous system, it is something that you can then train your brain is, this is okay and this is fine. And it's about being as calm as possible. So as I said before, we're not running into the end of the jetty and screaming. We're just going in nice and quietly and calmly. And our bodies are 70 or 80% water, and coming into a green and blue space can be really calming. And it's a really beautiful way to connect back to nature.
And it's not about length of time either, is it, Gilly? I'm guessing there were massive benefits from the few minutes that we spent in the water today.
Definitely. I mean, the science is now really that 2 or 3 minutes is all you sort of need in these temperatures to start to get that sort of neurological and physiological change happening. And it's definitely not a case of longer is better. A lot of people think that you need to stay in for, if I stay in for 5 minutes is good and 10 minutes is better. And it's a bit like the cold is this sort of very potent medicine that if we stay in too long, all we do is get more tired. So at the end of the day, by mid-afternoon, we're just knackered. And so it's just doing a little bit and building on it very slowly. And what's lovely is that each month and season unfolds, you just learn a bit more about your body and you learn about your own signals for, how long you want to stay in for. And some days you might want to do a bit of swimming, and other days you might just want to bob around and float. And other days you might just want to sit on the end of the jetty with a cup of tea and a biscuit and just be here.
I think that's what we should do now. You've brought some Bengal chai tea, which I've never had before, but it's very warming and spicy. And I think we'll continue this chat back at yours and just enjoy the view. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
So Gilly, we're back in the warm, wrapped up in cosy layers and our wool socks with a piece of toast and a cup of tea. I'm kind of still beaming and glowing, really. I think I've got a post-swim glow. Is that normal?
So that is actually a thing. It's a post-swimmer's glow. And a lot of people think it's probably because you've survived the cold. You've gone, oh my God, I didn't die. But all that is all these happy hormones. So the dopamine and the serotonin just coming up to the surface and flushing your body. And that's what that is. And it's really remarked, and it will happen after every swim. People say you never regret a swim. And I think part of it is because of this release of all of these hormones that are in the right balance for us. But we've also had this really amazing experience, which is to be outside in nature, in the cold, but in a community setting. And it's kind of rare nowadays, unless you actively seek it, to find these connections.
It's a shame, isn't it? I think we're quite detached in a way these days from nature. Mm-hmm. And when you're out there today in such a beautiful setting, you just can't help but feel good and alive. That's how I sort of felt when I was out there.
And I think there is something about the water which is, it doesn't care about your shape or your age or your gender or your skin colour. It just asks you to be present and be with it. And a lot of people find that when they come down to the water, they have these societal things on them. Oh, I've got to have the abs, and I've got to have no cellulite, and I've got to swim a distance. And actually you don't have to do any of that. You just got to be there. And once you get down to the water, you realise there's all shapes and sizes and ages and genders and abilities. And you've showed up. And so there's this great sort of celebration that you've actually just showed up and you've made that effort to get to the water. And whether you get in or not, doesn't really matter. You just have a nice float around and you're celebrating being free again and being a bit like a kid. We were playing, we were laughing, we were saying hi to the ducks, we were seeing the leaves and the low-flying geese and the other lake users. And it's like, wow, we weren't thinking about screens and about the news and about, oh my God, my stress with my blah, blah, blah. What a privilege to be able to do that and find that space.
I think before we did it, when we were exchanging messages, you said that the one thing we'll definitely have is fun, which I knew we would have. But you also said it would be life affirming. And that's quite a strong word, is probably the wrong thing, but it's quite a bold statement. And I genuinely felt that it was life affirming and that I'd like to do more of that. And I'm really proud that I did actually manage to do it. It's because you were so good at coaching me. We did a slow immersion. We took it gently. Can you just explain how we gently stepped in and what my brain was saying to my body and vice versa?
We're tropical animals. We're not comfortable being cold, and we're even less comfortable being cold. When you were a kid, when I was a kid growing up in the northeast of Scotland, we were used to being cold more. I grew up in a house that didn't have any central heating. I certainly didn't have a heated steering wheel and heated seats and all that kind of stuff. And we've become less used to being cold. And what's happening when you're getting into the water is your brain's going, nah, I don't like this. I want to be comfortable. And we become so much more used to being comfortable in everyday life. So when you stripped off and you took your shoes off and you had your feet on the gravel, your brain's going, not sure about this. Thanks very much. And then as you get in a bit further, your brain's going, really, I'm not sure about this now, Helen. I'm not that psyched about this at all. And then you get into your waist and your brain's going, oh my gosh, she's actually doing this. And by entering the water slowly, you're just calming all of that noise down in your brain to go, it's okay, it's safe. We're going in with a smile and we're relaxing into this and we're opening our bodies up instead of closing our bodies down. And we're keeping our eyes open and we're looking around and we're switching into this state of being, this is okay and this is kind of okay. And you're re-remembering something that we've forgotten, which is by putting ourselves into a stressful situation in a way which is by our own volition, it's able to allow us to handle stressful situations outside of that in a new way. And that's really why cold water has proven to be helpful for reducing depression and anxiety or increasing wellness and happy mood, because we're doing this stressful thing in a way which is not stressful.
You're working with the NHS and a team of people at the minute. Tell me about that project and how you're using cold water to help people who perhaps suffer from anxiety or mental health problems or stress.
This is the second round of trials with the University of Oxford, Portsmouth University and the NHS Trust Sussex. And it's with a team of professors, scientists, psychologists, psychiatrists, amazing, incredible world-class team that have put together a study. And I'm just one of the swim coaches. There's 14 places across England. And in this study, we have had 245 people that are part of a randomized control trial. And it's an 8-week course. So they get referred from their GP or they self-refer. And it's to see if cold water and open water swimming, outdoor swimming, can be helpful to alleviate depression and anxiety. And the cohort go through an 8-week course. And at the end of the 8 weeks, they see if there's a turn in that dial towards wellbeing. And so far from the single-arm trial that was run last year, it's very compelling. So it's very hard with these sort of studies to see where the mechanism is. If we were to go and play chess today in the forest, would we still feel great? If we were to just go and dance by the shore, would that have the same effect? And so to tease it all apart is going to take a while. The study, I think, the results aren't going to be out for another 1.5 or 2 years. It's called the Outside 2 study. And it's with Heather Massey and Mike Tipton and Mark Harper and Hannah Denton. And these people have been leading this field for decades into what happens to our bodies when we get into the cold. And it's a real privilege to be able to do this stuff. And the net result is that this will be able to pull down more funding to then GPs can then refer. Cold water for wellbeing. It's
quite encouraging, I think, to hear that the NHS is embracing this and it's on their radar and they're trying to make a difference.
Because talking therapies have got such a huge waiting list and we have got a mental health crisis in this UK at the moment, across the globe we have, that we need to be looking at these things. And then within that, these natural blue and green spaces need to be protected. And that's the thing that I feel really passionately about, is that it's great that we are looking at the water for well-being, but within that, what does that look like for nature? And what does that look like for all of us to have a better understanding about the world that we're living in and looking at the leaves on the trees coming down and being able to identify these things? And that's the bigger part of it, is that we need to be going into the outdoors more, getting the sunlight into our eyes first thing in the morning and feeling this vitamin D. And what we're not doing is then protecting those environments. So hopefully one will then lead into another.
Because there has been a lot of talk, I think even Windermere was mentioned in it, about the quality of water, the bit of water, the piece of water, the area of water even, that we swam in today looked really clean to me. But do we have a problem across Britain with the health of our water and pollution and sewage and things like that?
The state of our waterways in the UK is dire. There's no question of that. The state of the water on Windermere, is it dire? No. But it's almost like the poster child for what's happening across the UK. And I've swum in some really bad bodies of water down south. And United Utilities are one part of that problem. and the different water companies are. But we also have global warming, and we also have agricultural runoff, and those things all play a part as well. So whilst we need to be campaigning hard against the water companies to clean up their act, there's been no investment in the sewage treatment works and the water treatment works across the UK for decades. We need to also be looking at a changing landscape. So there are ways that you can still swim safely in water. And like we did today, we didn't put our face in. You're going to wash your hands afterwards, all that kind of stuff. But we just all need to take a bit more care about the bodies of water that we're swimming in, for sure.
So the science, without going too complicated, give me a sense of the actual science behind it and what that cold water exposure is actually doing in our bodies and in our brains.
We are putting ourselves into a stressful situation, which is by our own volition. And by doing that repeatedly, you're almost like hacking into your brain to be able to then handle stressful situations more easily. And that's anecdotally been talked about across the board for years. And now the science is sort of catching back up with that. But also being in a greener blue space. Hippocrates, way back in 3500 BC, was talking about cold water for wellbeing. And we sort of lost that along the way. And now we're looking at the science to kind of back up what we've known for years. So we're going into cold water. It's releasing a lot of the happy hormones. But also what's interesting is now there's been studies. Last year, there was a study about cold water to help women with menopause. And I think it was like 70% of those women said that they definitely had helped improve their menopause. So there's lots of mechanisms that we don't really understand yet to do with. It's basically reducing inflammation. So reducing inflammation in the brain and in the body, looking at things like type 2 diabetes. Cold water might be beneficial for that, helping with sleep, boosting our circulation, reducing inflammation. All of these things are now being researched. And a lot of people love the science and they're like, I need to know the science before I do the thing. And a lot of people are like, I just want to give this a go because it's free. The barrier to entry is the skill. But there's so many groups now across the UK that are like, join. They're really friendly and it doesn't need to be that cold. You know?
And you formed a group, Blue Mind Men, which does allow women in, even though there's men in the title. And I wish I lived nearer because this came about, I think, after you swam every day in January, come rain or shine or snow. You were raising money for mental health charities at the time. Tell me about this group that I know if I lived up here, I'd be begging you to join.
So I moved to Cumbria 10 years ago after living down south. And I started my cold water journey by standing on the shores of Windermere one morning and thinking I need to give this a go. It rains quite a lot. I thought I'd flip this sport from doing climbing to a little bit of cold water swimming. And I was there with my surfing wetsuit on. Got into the water and thought, blimey, this is quite ridiculous and a bit hardcore. But then the next day went back without my wetsuit and got into the water. And then fast forward to that winter, I decided to swim every day in January to raise money for a mental health charity and just really enjoyed the benefits from it. And that was about 8 or 9 years ago now. And then since then, every January, I've done that, bar 2 years, and really loved it. And a few years ago, I was like, it's actually quite hard work. You get up in the morning and you're going to go and swim in a body of water and you're going to promote it and raise money. And so 2-3 years ago now, I was like, how can I change it up? So I thought I'll swim with different men. and the reason I did that was because men are less likely to access talking therapies and suicide effects. 75% of suicides are men. And it struck me that a lot of this cold water stuff had been promoted to women of a certain age, and it's something that women should be getting into, but not men. And I just thought it would be a shame. It would be nice to kind of redress this balance. On day one, I set off on my plan to swim with a man, but it was Charlie, and he was too hungover to join me for a swim.
Charlie's your husband.
So he was too hungover to join me for a swim. So I found myself standing on the shores of one of the high up bodies of water looking for a dog walker who was a male to walk past. And I managed to entice him to get his clothes off and get into the water with me.
Nice job.
I know, I was so chuffed with that. But on the mid-month, I was doing it with another swim coach, and mid-month we ran out of men to swim with locally. So I went north of the border and I swam with a group called the Edinburgh Blue Balls, which is a men's swimming name. And that was a really beautiful experience to swim with them. But in the month I swam with Johnny, who's this other swim coach, with over 150 different men. We swam with veterans, ex-prison officers, alcoholics, academics, journalists, filmmakers, teachers, crossfitters, you name it. And it was really incredible to see this transformation happening to these guys. And at the end of the month, we set up Blue Mind Men. Blue Mind coming from the Wallace J. Nichols term about blue mind and about how blue spaces are really beneficial for us. And that swim group is still going. So we meet every Sunday. It's for men and friends. We swam with the few transmasculine guys that wanted to come down to the water and join us. So it's for men and friends. We have lots of women that come down and they're the towel holders for their husbands or their partners. And it's just a place just to be, to strip off, get into your swimming trunks and get into the water. And it's exactly like what we did today. In the water that's under 15, we're not swimming for very long. We're just getting in and bobbing around, but it's a chance just to share the water and to strip back to being as Mother Nature intended, and very powerful to watch it unfold.
It's nice that we stood more or less where you started your experience 10 years ago, but you're pretty hardcore now, Gilly. I mean, I have seen footage of you swimming through ice. Mm-hmm. So whilst it was, I'm glad it was below 12, actually, it was 11.7. 11.7 sounds a bit chilly. Wow, boy, that was chilly. I mean, you swim in zero. How did you go from doing what we did today to really embracing icy waters? And what is that?
So honestly, it's exactly the same experience that you had today. It never becomes easier. And this is what I think. It becomes easier in some ways, but there's never that, oh my goodness, this is just totally a breeze. You know, so the experience that you had today was hard. When I'm getting into 2 or 3 degree water, it's still hard. And all that happens is that your cold shock response, so that response to the cold just becomes diminished a little bit. So now I can get into water and I don't have that gasping reflex. But I still quite often have that, oh my goodness, what on earth am I doing here? I could have been tucked up in bed and I'm standing on this shoreline and there's ice on the ground. And that's all it is. I mean, I really love finding ice. There's something about getting into ice that for me personally is very compelling. It's a psychological thing more than a physical thing. There's a psychological element to it, which I find quite fascinating. I don't really swim that much in the summer and I really seek out the cold, but it doesn't need to be that cold if people are listening. You just need to have it so that it's giving you that, and even just turning your shower down a couple of degrees and ending cold, you can start to have that journey. We don't need to go from doing nothing to getting into an icy body of water with an axe and huffing and puffing. We just don't need to do that. In fact, for many people, that's just too much for their brains and their bodies to handle.
What are the benefits for you personally? And I am thinking at the minute, I'm imagining you in a body of icy water. Where are you mentally when you're actually in it? Is that a bit of a meditative state for you, or are you thinking about things? And how do you feel afterwards when you get out?
So it's really funny because there's a couple of tarns and little lochs near here that get frozen in the winter, and I often think I'm just doing a little bit of housekeeping. I go up with my axe, found in that the mystery aisle in, is it whichever supermarket it is, you got that mystery aisle with all the axes and different unicorns and things. That's a great place to find your tools for winter, and I feel it's a bit like housekeeping. You go up and tidy up the tarn and break the ice away and clear a space and then get in. It's a very sharp, focused, present meditation. You can't be anywhere else apart from just being in that body of water. But it's hard to explain unless you've done it. There's the sounds of the ice like folding over each other and the stillness and feeling that water on your body. And then knowing that when you get out, you're going to get this lovely rush of endorphins, and it does become quite addictive. And it really feels like you've achieved something. And even if the rest of the day you're just sitting at your desk, writing invoices or writing articles, the fact that you've done that for yourself and it's been a space that you've carved out for yourself, excuse the pun, that's what's really lovely. But also nowadays, there's a lot more people that are doing it. It's who made the hole, or who's going to go up to that tarn with me, and that kind of thing. And it's a community thing, stripped back, playful community thing that I just love. Yeah.
And that you gave me that sense when we climbed out today. I was so looking forward to our tea. It was so lovely getting warm. I was all fingers and thumbs trying to put your big toweling robe on. And then I realised I hadn't brought any underwear with me, and I was all kind of all over the place, really. But you said to me when we climbed out that we could go back tonight and do it again, and it would be that a little bit easier, and tomorrow we could do it again. So it's possible to gently and carefully push those boundaries, because now I'm kind of thinking one day I'd like to try the ice thing, but obviously there's a big journey to go through before I would do that. But it's possible, isn't it? If it's done slowly and with common sense. I get why that appeals now. I like the idea of being there with my little axe and experiencing those sounds, because you're so immersed in nature. And I'm guessing as well that your mind can't think about anything else, because it's also about survival as well, isn't it?
I think in the world that we live in today, we don't really lean into risk as much as I think we should. And I'm saying that as in mitigating the risk and understanding the risk. And I think that there's something really lovely about learning something and learning about your body in a way where you can then do things in a way which you're mitigating that risk. And I say that from my world as a rock climber, is about doing things in a safe way. And this is about learning something and then catching the degrees as they drop. And for many people, they never would need to get into the ice, but it is just about getting used to being a little bit uncomfortable and then keep going. And for some people, it might be that they want to then sit in an ice bath. But for the benefits, the health benefits and the science, we don't need to get into water that cold. For me personally, I really like that. There's lots of injuries and things that can happen when you get into water that's that cold. But over the years, you learn about what your body can and can't handle. There are people that will swim a mile in water that's under 5 degrees. But we don't need to all do that. And for some people, all they'll ever do is to just swim in the summer. But by connecting to these beautiful spaces, we're connecting back to ourselves in a way which is really valuable. And we should all do more of it. And even if it is that you're listening to this and you're in the centre of a big city, if we just take our shoes and socks off and just connect to the ground in the park, that's a really amazing way just to start to feel a little bit connected to ourselves again. We don't need to be hiking up to the top of a hill. So.
Where are some of your favourite haunts, and are they quite remote haunts?
It's a tricky question, that, because in my Rolodex in my mind now, I'm whirling through all of these places that I've swum before that have felt really magical. And a lot of them are quite remote. They're the ones that I know not that many people have been to. So I swam in Fingal's Cave, which is over on the west coast of Scotland. And it's where Mendelssohn wrote whichever symphony it was. And it's a basalt columned cave. And I went in there and it was at the right tides, and I got in there and I swam, and that was absolutely, completely incredible. But sometimes just swimming on Windermere first thing in the morning, that jetty that you're on is crisp and there's a heavy mist and there's just the sun coming up and the geese are just flying in between the mist and the water. And then you get out of the water and you put your swimming costume down on the jetty and it freezes, and then you're having your cup of tea. Every swim is magical. So yeah, the most special ones are probably the ones that are up high and a bit harder to find, but there's still a huge value just to swimming in the sea with a bunch of people off the coast of Norfolk, you know.
Do you sometimes find special places when you're climbing with that bird's eye view when you're up high?
Yes. So there's a beautiful body of water near here where I go climbing in the summer, and I love swimming there in winter. And actually in the body of water film, I go up there in the depths of winter, and it was about -20 wind chill, and I got in and had an incredible swim up there. But it's where I would normally climb in the summer. So it's like this juxtaposition of vertical solid and horizontal liquid that I really love. There's something about the beauty of that really captures my imagination. So if I can find a place where I climb with a body of water underneath it, I'm in heaven.
Then you're happy. And I mean, there are beautiful places to wild swim all over the world, but all over Great Britain. I saw on your Instagram this week, you were promoting a new book about islands, wild swimming places. When you get into it, there are all sorts of lovely places to find and discover, aren't there?
And it's the communities. There's an amazing community of people on the margins of water in the UK and across the world, and they're very welcoming. And that's what I found with the swimming every day in January with different men. I'd put out a little message saying, I'm coming up to Edinburgh. Would anyone like to meet me tomorrow morning? But you have to be male. And that sounds a little bit alarming. And it just worked. And I've got some brilliant memories of standing outside a bus shelter in January in Edinburgh And these two blokes turned up. One of them was a prison officer and the other one was a teacher. And they're like, "Are you Gilly?" And I was like, "Yes." "All right, we're here to meet you." We went down to the shore and took off our clothes, put our swimming costumes on, got in the water, had a bounce around, came out, had a cup of tea. "All right, that was brilliant. Have a nice day. Cheerio." I mean, you don't get that playing hockey. Do you know what I mean? And it's, wow, people are so welcoming and willing to share that sense of stripping it right back to just being human. And that's what's just gold about this. It's just, yeah, get on with it. It cuts through everything. And what's really cool is that you would observe this if you carry this on, is before you get into the water, it's quite quiet. People are like having a little bit of a giggle. People get into the water. They go for their lovely swim or dip, and we're not doing any distance often. And then when people get out, the laughter and the energy and the hugs and the camaraderie is really life affirming. And I think we need a bit more of that today, you know, in this day and age.
I don't really know much about your background, Gilly. Where did this huge love and passion for the outdoors come from in the first place? Have you always been an outdoor kid?
I grew up in the northeast of Scotland and my parents are from Inverness. And so I had a bit of a sort of feral childhood in as much as we were always out at the weekends in a forest, learning about a tree and that kind of thing. But then when I went to university in Edinburgh, I sort of forgot all of that. And I really only circled back into nature connection and being outdoors when I got burnt out. I worked for a big retail company. I worked for Gap. I worked in New York for them. And they worked, as a lot of American companies do, worked me really hard. And I loved it. But I got quite burnt out. I took a year off. I moved to the Alps, have a year off and just learn to snowboard and work in a bar. And that was my sort of crossroads. That was my, do I go back into that world now of corporate, next big hat, what is it that you want next sort of thing, into going, maybe I can just turn left into this different new world. And that's what I did. And I left the big corporate world, using the skills I had from corporate retail into the outdoor industry, worked in the outdoor industry for a while. And then I went freelance and had a lot of tragedy. I had a daughter who died back in 2011.
Oh, Gilly, I'm
and
so
then
sorry.
Thank you. And then 6 months after Elsie died, I went on a climbing trip to Utah, and I was halfway up a route in Utah, rock climbing, and I slipped and fell and broke my back. So those two huge life-changing events really then were that sort of heavy stitch in the tapestry for me, dark stitch in the tapestry of life. But in both of those tragedies, sitting in nature were what was my healing to move on. And I realized that there was a great power to being outside that I'd sort of forgotten about from being a kid. And that was where I started to then reshape and reform and question and do that sort of inner seeking of what really mattered. And that was where all of this stuff started to bubble up from. And so we moved up here. And that's where I found myself standing on the shores of Windermere going, right, I'm going to give this a go then. And fast forward to right place, right time for me.
It's interesting, on the podcast, on the Convex Conversation, we've interviewed a number of people who've had some tragedy in their life and who have talked about how nature was their saviour and the power of nature. And I think a lot of us have forgotten how to perhaps touch base with it and realise the power it's got. We live in these busy, hectic worlds where we're addicted to our phones and screens and we're super stressed. And it would do us all a lot of good, I think, wouldn't it, to perhaps try and embrace a bit more, even if it is only a walk in a local park.
Yeah, I think the stats now, we are in a mental health crisis. And I think part of that is we have got very addictive, superpowered computers in our pockets called our phones. And when you think about prisoners now spend more time outside than kids do. And that's and 1 in 9 children hasn't been outside an urban environment for a year. And so when you start to look at those figures, and in the UK, we've got less than 10% tree cover left. So we're a very stark landscape already. There's so much work that needs to be done to protect what little that we have left. So when we know that being outdoors in whatever way can really be powerful for us, from a physical way, getting our vitamin D and all of these wonderful things, modulating our circadian rhythms, but also physically and mentally, and just feeling like you're part of something much bigger. You're feeling quite small in a much bigger space. We just need to be doing that more, and we're not, because it takes effort, but also we're sort of told now you need to have the right jacket and you need to have the right thing. You don't really. You can just sit in a park without your phone. Even just doing that, even just sitting on a bench, but not looking at your phone for 5 minutes. Just try that. Just observe, sit quietly, observe your breath, maybe learn the trees in your local park, and just start to build this connection back up. Nature's amazing, and it's just asking to be seen, and we're not seeing it.
It's forgiving, isn't it? Because it doesn't seem to care if we haven't been there for a while. It still gives. We were looking today at the golden leaves just blowing off the trees. We did our little pre-chat sitting on a log. You sketch, and you sketch beautifully. And in fact, watching the leaves float down today reminded me of a sketch I saw on your Instagram yesterday of a swim you did where the leaves were floating down. It was all there for the taking. It's free. I'm wearing my jogging pants that I bought in New York 25 years ago that my daughter's trying to steal because she now thinks they're vintage. But we were just out there with our flask of tea. I'm still high as a kite, Gilly. I really loved it. It was special, and I felt really privileged to have a guide in you. I knew I was going to do it. You got me in such a great place. It was hard.
I think, and it is about finding your start point. And I think that's the thing in all of this, is that everyone has an individual backstory and everyone brings that to the water. And some people are able just to get in and do it in a way which is effortless. And other people have to take the time and think about it for a bit and maybe just dip a toe or maybe not get in. But it's just the showing up. And I think that's the thing that people nowadays tend to use this cold or open water swimming as another measure of like machoism. I managed to stay in for longer. And actually, if you stay in too long, you're just going to get tired. You're going to feel grumpy and you're going to get more dehydrated. And sleep, stress, hydration, they will all play into how you feel. So if we drank a bottle of gin tonight and partied all night and we tried to get in tomorrow, it would feel very different to how it did today. Just if the wind is blowing a hoolie or it's raining or we're in a different mindset. But what's great for everyone is that over the years of doing it and catching the winters as they come, you get better at it. And there's very few things in life that as you get older, you get better at physically, unless you put a lot of effort in. But this is just about showing up, catch the degrees as they drop and keep going.
I like that phrase, catch the degrees as they drop. Honestly, the excitement when I realised it wasn't 12 and it was 11.7, that was really exciting because it dropped before I even got in.
It dropped before you got in, yeah, I know.
Brilliant. You mentioned body of water. I've seen the promo film for it. You've made programmes and documentaries about cold water exposure. Tell me about body of water and what challenge you were doing for that.
It was shot in, I think it was like 2019. Two filmmakers wanted to capture my swims in January. And what started off as a 5-minute short ended up growing arms and legs with this quest for me to find ice to swim in January. And we swam across the north of the country looking for ice to swim in, and we just couldn't find any. And the irony was that the year later, it was the coldest winter in 25 years or something crazy. And there was so much ice, you just couldn't move for ice everywhere. But that film won quite a lot of awards, and it's on the Water Bear Network, which is a sort of environmental Netflix. It's free and there's some amazing environmental films on there. And it's just a journey of me swimming in different places, with a bit of my story about like love and loss and my accident that I had climbing, and then about looking for ice. And there's some really beautiful imagery in it and some amazing original score that was written for the film as well. So it's a short film. It's only 40 minutes long, something like that.
That sounds really beautiful. What is next, Gilly? What else is out there for you?
There's always new bodies of water to swim in. I am doing some more work for this Side 2 study for the NHS. So that's going to be happening next year. And I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing because I love it. So I work with corporate groups, individuals, charities, blue light services, just helping people find their place in water for well-being. And it's a real gift. If someone had said I was 10 years ago, this is going to be your job and you're going to be doing this, I'd be like, no, but I am. And I've got a laundry full of wet swimming costumes hanging up to prove it. Yeah, I love it. And it's a real honour to have found it and to keep being part of this beautiful worldwide community of swimmers. It's great.
And you must see some real change with the people you work with. I would imagine that's very satisfying too, when you see the difference that you've been able to make to somebody's life.
It's definitely transformed a lot of people's lives. And I think that's in a few years ago, I started a sort of free group, which was just to help anyone just come down to the shore. I worked with a psychologist and a psychiatrist and another swim coach. And there were people that came down to the water literally in their toweling robes and frilly swimming costumes and just were struggling a lot. And a lot of those people are now off all medication. It's now something that they do, and they're now taking their families down to the water. And to hear that change in people is just incredible. That something that's ostensibly free can have such a powerful effect for well-being and to bring more joy back into people's lives. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
And what about you, Gilly, after going through two such difficult tragedies and times in your life? How are you and how has this helped put you back together?
So I have found that the cold water is always just a teacher. And I think it always just brings me back to understanding that everyone in life has a struggle. And there's a really beautiful sort of commonality in the water, that my situation was a sad situation, but everyone has sad situations. And the sort of empathy to understand that everybody has a journey, and it might not be a visible one, but they might be really struggling underneath the skin. It has made me feel really grateful to have had those things happen to me, because it's helped me look inward so that I can then look outward again. And so obviously I'd like things to have been different with my daughter, but there were so many learnings in there that I feel very privileged to have found those learnings and to then be able to share that with sort of other people in a way which is kind of measured. And yeah, look, it's not all bad. John Kabat-Zinn, who is the founder of mindfulness meditation, says that as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. And I really like that. I think we get too obsessed nowadays with these minute things which are really annoying, when actually there's just all of this world out here. And if we can just shine our spotlight of attention away from the bad stuff and onto all this good stuff, there's still a lot to be celebrated. And I think outdoor swimming in natural bodies of water can really help with that.
That's a really lovely quote, actually, to end on. I wish I lived up here. You will be, I know, a fun friend, because I know I'm not going to lose you from my life. Yeah, I'm going to move in, actually. Yes, I am. But I wish I lived closer, because I know we'd have great adventures and that you'd help push me out of my comfort zone a little bit more, all which appeals to my adventurous spirit. And I love the idea of being part of one of your cold water swim clubs. But I just wanted to say thank you for your kindness, your patience, your care. You sent me a kit list and then it said on the bottom, but actually don't worry about any of that. You're about the same size, I've got everything you need. And I was all fingers and thumbs on the shore, because there I was trying to concentrate on the podcast and getting in and kept losing my phone. It's been such a fun, lovely day, and with some really important messages in there. And hopefully people listening out there, if you've never tried it, try and find a local swimming club, I guess, is the advice, is it?
Yeah, just, you know what, if you just find a local swim group, and if you just Google that, there's loads and loads of groups and stuff online. There's also Mental Health Swims, which is across the UK. They've got lots of different locations. Outdoor Swimming Society online and Outdoor Swimmer online have got loads of resources. And now there's countless books about finding locations near you. And then within that, keep campaigning. We need to keep pushing for better protection of these beautiful spaces that we've got left in the mountains and in the forests and in the waterways.
You've been listening to cold water swim coach Gilly McArthur up in the Lake District. Do follow her on Instagram at Gilly McArthur, and that's MCARTHUR, just one C in there. And take a look at her brilliant website, gillymacarthur.com. Download our series at convex.podbean.com or search The Convex Conversation on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to yours. I'll be back next week, a few degrees warmer, but no doubt yearning to be back with Gilly for another adventure.